I'm thinking there might be one or two more people who connect, but we can probably get started with the forum.
Yeah, good idea.
So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to mute everybody.
Okay.
So for now, everybody's going to be muted, and I'll get started. So let's see. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley's Sunday Forum. My name is Matt Courtney, and I'm a board member and the recorder of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, I invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you have not yet joined. We do not have membership forms in the back because we're not in an actual location right now. You should check out our website, humanist.org. I hope that's correct. Somebody should raise their hand, correct me if I'm not right on that. What's next? Skipping new visitors. If you're new, listening online, great to see you. If you're not, I didn't see anybody new on Zoom, so you're not going to be able to introduce yourselves, and we're just going to skip that part then. Usually in our live presentation, we pass a basket for donations, but obviously we can't pass a basket online like this. So instead, again, go to humanist.org, and we should have a link for donating if you feel like donating to us. And at the end of this presentation, well, we should end our presentation. I don't know, we usually aim for about 12:15. I don't know if that's going to happen. Then right after that, we have a certain amount of questions and answers. And again, I will repeat, if you're on Zoom, you'll be able to just raise your hand, and that's going to participants, like clicking the participants button at the bottom of your screen to bring up the participants window. And then at the bottom of the participants window should be a button that says raise hand. And when you do that, and I can see it, I'll unmute you and allow you to talk and ask your question to our speaker. Our speaker should remain unmuted the whole time once we get this thing going. I think I'm going to do the same thing as last time, and after we're pretty much done with the question and answer section, I'll allow everybody to unmute. If you feel like leaving and you need to leave, go ahead and go. But we'll just kind of open it up to everybody to talk after specific questions are done. Do we have any announcements before we get started? Again, you can raise your hand. I'll see you. If you're on the video, okay, looks like Alex might. Alex.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I unmuted you. Go ahead.
I thought I'd mention that we also have a speaker next week. That's David Warnock, who's a former minister, now atheist, who's has Lou Gehrig ALS, and he's going to give a talk on what, living for today, you know?
Dying.
Yeah, the title is Dying Out Loud.
Okay.
Should be a good talk.
That does sound interesting. I'm going to mute you back again. So good. Yeah, tune in next weekend, and we'll have that talk. Any other announcements? It's better if you raise your hand in the participants window. I can see a little bit better. Not everybody's video is up for me, so I can't see everybody's video at the same time. Well, actually, maybe I can see most people's videos. Okay. Hey, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. I'll see if there's any more. I think that is it. I think we can get started on the presentation. So our presenter today is David Litton. He is the producer of Echoplex Media. And he's done a lot of these like shows where he's questioning basically crazy people and conspiracy theorists on his show. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute him. And Dave, you're on.
All right, so I've never given a talk before, so bear with me here. I hope I do a good job. I figured I'd fill in at the last minute. This is a talk that I was going to give for the Orchard City Indivisible group, and I've kind of tailored it a little bit for the Humanist Society instead. And I definitely shortened it up a little bit, and we're going to watch a video here at first. We're going to talk a little bit about disinformation and misinformation, because it's really important right now, I think, especially with the COVID-19. The stories we're going to go over aren't necessarily the story I'm going to go over in the second part of this isn't necessarily going to be about COVID-19, but we do have a COVID-19 related topic to bring up at the very end. I've been podcasting since about 2015, and we weren't sure what we were going to do, but it ended up being focused on disinformation and misinformation in a lot of ways. You know, from everybody, you know about Alex Jones from InfoWars. You probably know about Jenny McCarthy's anti-vaccine campaign. You probably know about Gwyneth Paltrow and her Goop thing. But the thing that's missing from a lot of these discussions is that there's hundreds of thousands of groups on Facebook, each with, anywhere from 500 to 10,000 members, that are all basically cesspools of misinformation, where the members in the group are spreading misinformation either to sell some kind of product or to maybe gain some kind of clout within the conspiracy world. And I guess that's sort of where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I have a fake Facebook account that's in basically all of those groups. And so that feed is pretty crazy. And one of my big things I've been kind of banging the drum on lately has been Facebook's, let's say, reluctance to start removing content that provides misinformation about specifically COVID-19, but also just medical misinformation in general. And that's one of the things that I think maybe folks like us could get a little more active in advocating for, especially because of where we live and the fact that, the probably a group of skeptics here and a group of people who like science-based medicine and, doctors and nurses and whatnot. So, I found a video that I think is pretty good. It's a little longer than the TED Talks we were watching, but not a lot longer. It's about misinformation, and it's specifically about Facebook. It's a year old, so it's not going to be about current stuff, but this stuff is kind of evergreen. And I think the interviewer and especially one of the women he interviewed at the very beginning did an excellent job of discussing this stuff. So I guess with that, Matt, can we get that video going? So the reason I chose this video over maybe one that is coming from a little more of my perspective, I feel like this guy was a little more credulous to Facebook than my perspective is. But it had some people from Facebook kind of doing some discussion about what they are saying they're trying to do. And the one guy did say something really important, that everybody thinks when they see misinformation that it's Russian bots. And that was sort of the point of Russian bots. It wasn't really necessarily to sway an election. It was to get everybody to distrust everyone else, to get everyone to think that, anything they see that looks like crazy behavior is a completely automated account. And one of the things that I try to talk about a little bit is that when people say the word bot, they're not necessarily being accurate. A lot of times these are, I like the term maybe highly moderated propaganda account versus a bot, because it's certainly oftentimes going to be run by a person, and it's going to be part of a group of people who endeavor to misinform or to sow distrust in one another. And I see Carl has his hand raised.
I'm going to unmute Carl. Okay. Trying to unmute him. Carl, hold on.
We can't hear you, Carl.
Yeah, I can't unmute him for some reason.
Do you have yourself muted?
I see.
There we go.
It's me that's doing it. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I didn't realize I could do it myself. Yeah, so I was wondering, I always had one thought, and that is that why can Facebook and these other organizations not just rate limit? In other words, when a bunch of stuff starts going out over a site, why can't they just say, okay, we'll limit you to 2,000 a day or something, instead of allowing millions of them to fly around? Did he talk to you at all about that?
You know, when you say rate limit, are you talking about the number of posts that an account is allowed to make?
I guess, I don't know if it's a number of posts as much as how many people they can add in a day, plus what you just said.
Well, the how many they can add in a day, if they were to rate limit that, let's face it, that's bad for business.
Yeah, it might be, but so what?
Well, I mean, maybe your concerns and my concerns are going to be incredibly different than the concerns of the investors and the board of directors at Facebook. What they want to show their investors is daily active users. So I think a lot of what they were saying in this video we watched was more for the purpose of marketing and PR than it was to give people good information. Because if they were to go through and get rid of, you know, all these networks of propaganda accounts, some estimates are, you know, I believe Kara Swisher, everybody who isn't reading Kara Swisher needs to read Kara Swisher. She's probably the best tech journalist out there. Estimates from her are that 10 to 15% of Facebook and more than that on Twitter are these highly moderated propaganda accounts. And so if they lost 10% of their daily active users, what would it do to their stock price? Oh, I believe Carl's trying to speak again.
I didn't mute him.
Oh. Oh, we got Philip. We got Philip here.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I can't unmute Carl. He muted himself. So I'm guessing.
Oh, I got it now.
There you go.
I don't understand. Anyway, it's very confusing, this mute, unmute. So that's why basically monopolistic competition laws were put into place to limit this kind of crap, right? Essentially, that's why you need laws. And I think they have been calling for more laws. And the laws could take effect where they, of course, diminish the profits of the corporation. Why wouldn't they want to, corporations, unfortunately, since I'm much more pro-business than I'm sounding right now, but nonetheless, somewhere along the line, there have to be limits. And in the capitalist society, we got to discuss those limits. And then those are the laws we need to pass. And if it's diminishing their profits, big deal.
Yeah, Facebook has a bit of a history on this kind of stuff. If everybody remembers, it must have been like 18 months ago, there was kind of a big measles outbreak. Maybe my time frame is a little bit off, but there was it was spread at Disneyland and I believe Walt Disney World, and I believe New York City had a rather large measles outbreak, particularly in like the I don't remember what the name for it is. I would say, like, is it the most conservative Jewish people weren't getting vaccinated, and on Facebook there was misinformation that was saying, and I know who was putting it out. His name is Del Bigtree. He's a big anti-vaccine person. The misinformation that was coming out from him was saying that trying to get these people to vaccinate was, akin to the Holocaust. And during that was weeks after Facebook had put out a press release saying that they were going to try to step on, a lot of this anti-vaccine content. But what happened, in my view, in that scenario was that Facebook got good press for saying they were going to do something. They took down a single Facebook group that just respawned under a very similar name, and then they got good press for it, and then they didn't do nothing about it. And this is sort of the cycle that they're going through with misinformation and disinformation, because most of the press is so caught up in the day-to-day news cycle because things are going so damn fast, and everybody forgets that Facebook said they were going to do something about, for example, the anti-vaccine movement, when they clearly have not. When there's Facebook groups that are public with tens of thousands of members, and I'm in a private one on my fake Facebook account, which they talked about in this video. There are good reasons to have a fake Facebook account that is not always misinformation. Sometimes it is for the purpose of spying on people doing misinformation or other types of journalism. But yeah, one of the groups I'm in has 110,000 members, and it's closed. None of you can see it. You don't know it's there. And so, what you're able to see on the surface on this stuff through the public posts, through celebrity conspiracy theorists, so to speak. That's like, you know, they show them, it's the tip of the iceberg. Most of the iceberg's underwater, and most of this stuff is happening in spaces that the average person doesn't have access to. And they sort of build little cults, and they have names for outsiders and whatnot. And that's how misinformation spreads and reinforces itself. It's in these spaces where the only reason I was able to get into this space is because I did it under false pretense, right? Using a Facebook account that is fake, that is a conspiracy theorist, is a purveyor of misinformation. Mind you, I don't share this stuff. I just am able to, I'm able to sing the right songs when I fill out the little form to enter the private groups and whatnot. I'm not spreading misinformation. I think that's unethical. The Facebook profile I have that does this is almost empty, basically, and it's all locked down. Nobody can see its friends. But yeah, the problem here is that a lot of this is happening in spaces that we can't see. There's Discord servers for it that you have to have a link to get into, and even sometimes then you need a password. There's WhatsApp group chats that are private that the misinformation is spreading in. There are sites like MeWe that nobody even knows about, basically, that's like a Facebook clone. There's obviously Gab, which is like a white supremacist Twitter, essentially. And like all these spaces that regular folk aren't in are like where a lot of this stuff is spreading, or at least where it starts. And then it hits like, when by the time you see it on your news feed on Facebook or Twitter, one of your friends, maybe we all probably have friends who aren't super scientifically literate, super skeptical. We have friends who aren't cynics, maybe like some of us are. I proudly call myself a cynic. And we all have friends like that. And by the time it hits where our eyes see it on our regular sort of, social media profiles, that's been stewing for 3 weeks, 4 weeks in these like communities that are very insular and very, very, I guess I'd almost call it cult-like in the way they operate.
Yeah, I've noticed that I have at least one friend who's been posting some conspiracy stuff, and it's like impossible to argue with because they've done all this stuff with it, or they have an answer to everything, even though the answers don't make sense. But I want to point out that Alex has his hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and let him unmute him.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah, Alex, you're muted.
It strikes me that part of the problem is just the nature of the internet here, that they're making their money on ads, and to get their ad watched, they have to draw someone to a site, and emotional issues draw people to sites, and it's kind of just by the nature of things that it's going to polarize people. I say the alternative is probably if it didn't polarize people, we would all find we hate the same poor schmuck. So it's just, part of it is just the nature of the business.
And part of it's the nature of us too. I mean, if it bleeds, it leads isn't a new thing.
Yeah.
It's been the news industry's like sort of thing that they've said, ever since I've been alive. And I'm sure it's, started way before me, before I was alive and able to notice it. But I think that there's a difference here because ostensibly a news gathering organization, let's just do the stand-in, the America's paper, the New York Times, right? Ostensibly, they have an editorial staff. They have a staff that does some fact checking. They are, at least their mission statement says they endeavor to deliver facts and the truth. Whereas Facebook, they don't have the means, nor do I believe they have the desire at this point to sort of be the referee or whatever, even though it's their platform where all this stuff is being posted.
Yeah, the trouble is that everybody's got a voice, which is good on the one hand, but it means every wacko in the world has his followers.
Yeah. And it's not just wackos. Some people that we might think are part of our tribe do it too, as skeptics and maybe not necessarily humanists, but certainly some people, the next part of this presentation I'm going to do is going to probably surprise some people. I'm not sure everybody's gonna like the subject matter and who I throw under the bus here, but if it's okay with you, Matt, unless anybody has, I see Ray's hand is up.
Yep, Ray, you're unmuted.
Okay, so I think that everybody's got a voice is fine, but when one person or one group, through manipulation of the system, can get millions of voices, that's what unbalances things.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times, and the video didn't touch on it, but what I see, especially on Twitter more than Facebook, just because it's harder for me. Like, there's tools out there for Twitter because everything's public. There's tools out there that can kind of identify the behavior of propaganda accounts, and you can like plug a Twitter link into this service, and it's not perfect, but I know the guy who did it, and he seems. I trust that he believes that he did it right, and it'll kind of give you an idea of, does this exhibit patterns we've seen from bots before. But what's going on, at least on Twitter, isn't so much that they're the ones making the messages. What they'll do is they'll find someone who probably is a real person, who isn't like popular or whatever, and is spreading some crazy idea, and then they'll amplify that. Where instead of having to make the message themselves, they'll find something divisive or something, just straight up misinformation, disinformation that some regular person is spreading around because they don't know better, or because they, maybe it suits their political agenda, or it reinforces their own biases about the world around them, and they'll amplify that, which is probably far more effective, because then the thing you see is that this real person's post got all this activity. You see all these likes and all these retweets. And unless, most of us aren't going to go in and examine all the accounts that are retweeting it. Like, who has the time for that? Like, I mean, I do it sometimes, but that's because I'm interested in this stuff and I care about it. And I want to, try to help people in whatever way I can to try to identify this stuff. But, not everybody's situated like that. Not everybody has an hour to go through all the retweets and figure out if these are even real accounts.
So I've got only one social media account, and that's on Facebook. I have nothing to do with Twitter or any of the others. And I think just keeping up with one is probably more time than I should be spending on that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think the reason this all works is because so many people, we call ourselves very online, right? A lot of people spend all day on Twitter, whether it's for their job, or they're just doing it at work because it kills time, or they're doing it because they're an independent journalist and they kind of have to. But we're all spending so much time on these services. That's the only way this kind of manipulation would work. If people were only on there for an hour a day, this stuff wouldn't work as well.
So the other problem I have is, I think that people get their accounts hacked or stolen or otherwise manipulated with, and the average person has no way to fix that.
Yeah, that's very true. And these companies don't, it's not like when you go to the grocery store and you have a problem, there's a person there you can talk to. Mind you, right now, if you have a problem with what's going on at the grocery store, don't waste their time. Like, if an employee was short with you or whatever, that employee's having a hell of a worse day than you are probably. So just let them be. Don't complain at the grocery store right now unless you see like a safety or a health hazard that's happening and you're doing it to help people. But like in most, traditional organizations, before we had these massive internet companies like Facebook, Twitter, to some degree Amazon, but Amazon, you can get a real person because you're giving them money and they're afraid that you'll stop giving them money. But, Facebook, Twitter, Google, that's another place you're never going to get a real person. Like if you have a YouTube account and it gets hacked or whatever, you're never getting it back. And so the traditional business model of like customer service has been thrown out the window because we're not the fucking customer any. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm swearing in a place maybe I shouldn't be. We're not the customer anymore. We're an ad package that's being sold to their real customers. We're part of
Google,
go ahead.
Google is another big problem. I've got a smartphone, first one I've ever had. I've had it for a couple of years now, and it's always telling me to update Google Play services. And I can't do that because somehow I have a password that works on my PC, but I can't do anything on my phone. So I can't run any apps on my phone because I can't update Google Play services. And I can't contact anybody at Google to try and fix that.
Oh, that's weird if you have the password that works. You know what, when this is all over, Ray, we can grab a beer or a cup of coffee and I can try to help you fix that.
All right.
Looks like we have another person with their hand up. I'm going to mute
Philip.
Ray. So Philip, you are unmuted.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Great.
I'm pretty new with this. I was looking at Meetup and I saw this. This seems like an interesting topic. You guys are talking about propaganda, disinformation. I'm thinking that you see something in the social media post that you think is a propaganda or some sort of there's a disinformation. I don't have a lot of experience with that, but let's say you have a proposition that you see in social media or whatever place. What makes something a propaganda or a disinformation?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to be pretty straight up. I am a propagandist. I'm not going to say that I'm not. Like what I do through the function of my podcast and my streams on Twitch, I am a purveyor of a specific point of view. I will use whatever sorts of rhetorical tactics I feel like I need to use to get my point across, but I don't lie to people. So I think that propaganda and misinformation are two different things. Propaganda can be true.
I see.
Propaganda is more about the presentation and the fact, basically, when I think about propaganda, I think it's just information presented in a way to attempt to persuade somebody using media. I think that, remember, pay your taxes to defeat the Axis during World War II. That was propaganda. It was right. It was correct, but it was propaganda. Those posters are kind of cool looking too. I wish I could find one of the original ones because that'd look great here in my studio, right? But so I think that there's a little bit of a difference between propaganda and misinformation. And I think that a lot of times, I liked your question a lot right there because I think that's something I probably wouldn't have brought up myself. I think that people oftentimes will put those two into the same basket, whereas misinformation might be a basket inside of the propaganda basket, but not all propaganda is incorrect or misleading. It's not necessarily going to be untrue. It's just going to be designed to push your behavior, to push your thought process a certain direction.
I see. Huh. And I think misinformation is okay. So when someone makes a proposition that he claims is if he's lying, if he knows that the fact is the way it is A, but he's lying and say that is B, then that's misinformation, correct?
Well, I don't think the person has to know that what they're spreading is misinformation. I think that's how misinformation works on the internet, is that we'll see something that maybe that's untrue or exaggerated or misleading, maybe, that reinforces sort of what we already believe about the world around us. And some of us, probably myself included, I've probably done this too. I bet everybody's done this. We'll just spread it around because it seems true. Maybe it's worded in an authoritative way. It's, a lot of times medical misinformation, like the anti-vaccine movement, they'll kind of couch it in sciencey sounding language. And so I think the point of good and misinformation is that maybe somebody that originated it knows it's not true, but the point of good misinformation is a weird thing to say. Effective misinformation, one of the attributes of it is that other people spread it thinking it's true.
Well, I mean, the originator of the misinformation, maybe like you said, they think that it's true, but it's false.
Right.
And I think, and not just one, but it seems to me that everyone does that, right? I mean, we always think that we know something and then we actually don't know, but we just, blab out our political point of view or what suits our interests. So, it seems like it's not like any single, party's problem. It seems to be a collective problem that humanity share. So a collective flaw, you can say, that sometimes we just don't know, but we think that we know and we yap out whatever we think. And some people take that what we're saying as true information, whereas in reality, we don't really know. And it seems that there's nothing we can fix about this. Is there any way we can fix this?
That's a good question. Maybe I'm not the one to answer it. There could be an argument made that what I'm doing throws fuel on the fire. That what I'm doing, sort of emboldens those who spread misinformation because they think that, oh, well, if these guys over here are making fun of us, or these guys over here are coming after us and bad mouthing us, we must be doing something right. Do you know what I'm saying? So fixing it is a very difficult thing. And I don't think there's a fix for it necessarily outside of maybe educating and showing people that we're all susceptible to believing things that aren't true.
Oh, I see.
So I think we got some requests to move on to the regular presentation. So
okay.
I'm going to mute Philip and Dave. I think we can go on to your slides and everything.
Yeah. This is gonna be a fun one. I imagine this will spark some conversation. I'm ready whenever you are, Matt.
Okay, just give me a second. Here we go. We're not doing video this time, and I'm escaping that. Escape. This may not be working.
Used to access the internet from a different physical.
There we go. Okay. I think I got it this time. Oh.
Is there any way to full screen this guy?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so
and just let me know when you want to switch slides.
Okay, so we're going to talk about cement milkshakes. I know this sounds silly, but this is a hoax that happened on Twitter. Let me see. I think it was the last weekend in June, 2019, and it happened in Portland. I'm not going to go over the entire story of what happened in Portland, but I would like, if anybody's interested in this, you can go ahead and take a look at what happened. But let's get started. Let's have our first slide. Okay, so we know about misinformation from this guy, right? Everybody knows who this is, and this slide is great. It's like question everything, and it's like the bottom one is like, no, don't question me, question everything else, because that's what this guy says. And we also have this guy who spreads medical misinformation. If we can see this guy, and he also talks about quantum physics a lot, and he knows about as much about quantum physics as I do. And then we got the next guy. This guy spreads misinformation about psychology and just about everything. But maybe not. Maybe you didn't expect this guy. Oh, wait, that's Zoolander. Can we get the next slide? Oh, that's Sam Harris. Everybody knows who Sam Harris is, right? So, and yes, I think he looks a little like Zoolander. So on June 30th, Mr. Harris sent out this tweet. It says, anyone making light of this attack on Mr. Andy No has no idea what this level, I'm sorry, it's covered up a little bit, what this level of incivility and intolerance can cost us. And under it, this is Majid Nawaz. He posted a tweet saying that there was cement disguised as a milkshake at a protest. Now, I could back all the way up and tell you the story about what's happening here, but I'm just going to try to keep this brief. I'm going to give you the long story short, and I do hope that if anybody's interested in this, you look into what happened, the events of the last weekend of June in 2019. So the long story short is a far-right group called Patriot Prayer held a rally in Portland, and of course people counter-protested, and a gentleman, we'll use the term gentleman loosely, his name is Andy No, he got milkshaked. I don't know if everybody remembers, for a while people were throwing milkshakes at racists. It's not nice, but it's not likely to cause injury. You shouldn't assault anyone in any way, but then he got punched. That's wrong. You shouldn't beat up Andy No or anyone. Now, the replies to Sam's tweet here are kind of telling. Reason being, well, the question at hand should be, I think, is were they putting quick dry cement in milkshakes? And so let's bring up the next slide. Here's the next slide. People were making fun of Sam Harris for saying that milkshaking is a mock assassination. Well, it's kind of a silly thing to say. And as you can see in the next slide, somebody did say that it was silly. But then we have this person, L, who said, do you consider it silly to be after some protesters? Do you consider it to be silly after some protesters mix chemical substances into the milkshakes? Again, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of effort on the part of the Sam Harris camp and all this to determine whether or not the cement was put into the milkshakes. So we have we can pull up the next slide. And those who were asking for evidence that the milkshakes were being used as chemical warfare were met with a response like this one. The Portland police have received information that some of the milkshakes thrown today during the demonstration contained quick-drying cement. We are encouraging anybody who's hit with a substance to report it to police. And obviously, we have received information doesn't mean that they've determined that there was cement in the milkshakes. It just means they were told this. Maybe they read it on Twitter. Who knows? And then somebody said, hey, you know, that basically what I said, receiving information and having evidence is two different things. And then this L West or whatever here, who is in the Sam Harris camp, now has moved the goalpost now, but the potential is there for someone to do it. All it takes is for one violent individual blending in with the rest of the mob. So now we're in the discussion at the point where, well, it could happen. We're a little bit of ways away from whether or not it did happen. So, and the backdrop of this is what she's talking about, the mob here is like a counter protest against the Southern Poverty Law Center recognized hate group. These were not a mob. The people counter protesting were probably people like the people in this Zoom meeting, people who maybe don't like far right racist groups coming to their city. The counter protest was largely peaceful, but like I said, I would encourage anybody to look this up because I don't want, you know, I bring my own biases here. So people might, you know, maybe you're wondering, why did I pick Sam Harris for this? Because there's other purveyors of misinformation out there. The reason I chose him and not one of the other people that purveys misinformation is that he's ostensibly one of us. He's a skeptic. He's an outspoken atheist. I'm unsure if he would identify as a humanist, but I bet he would. I'd ask, but during this melee here, when people were asking him, you know, could you prove that there was cement in the milkshakes? You know, why are you spreading this? I got blocked by the man on Twitter. Along with hundreds of other people. You know, and like I said a couple times, I encourage you to look into these events yourself. I bring my own biases to this forum, as we all do. I have biases against Patriot Prayer. I have biases against the subject of this, Andy No, who was hit with a milkshake and then punched, although, like I said, you shouldn't be punching people. And I have my own biases against Mr. Harris. But what I know for sure is if there were dangerous chemicals being mixed in with milkshakes and used as a weapon, if there was any evidence of this at all, we'd have heard about it for months and months. And it didn't happen. That's because I don't think there was any cement in the milkshakes. I think this was a hoax. But in the war of bad ideas, all that matters is what people believed in real time, because this is going to fall off of the news cycle so quickly. And there's just going to be kind of a residual memory of Antifa chemical weapons experts using cement in milkshakes. You know, there were people in the construction industry in the comment threads saying this is a stupid idea. This wouldn't work. It's not gonna do anything if you mix it in with milk and ice cream. The quick drying cement isn't. You know, if you get it in your eyes, it's bad for you, but it's not going to stick to your skin. You know, they were saying, you know, the people with expertise were debunking this even as a usable weapon, as a feasible weapon in a street fight. And it didn't matter, because if you are irrationally afraid of people counter protesting far right groups in the streets, if you're irrationally afraid of Antifa, then you're going to believe that they used chemical weapons. And that was the point of this misinformation campaign. I don't believe that Sam Harris started the misinformation campaign, but I do believe that he did not do his due diligence, and that he was perfectly happy to spread the information because it sort of suited his bias and the bias of his viewers and listeners. And if you want to see the evidence of the cement milkshakes, we have, I can conclude this talk with our very last slide. This is the evidence of the cement milkshakes. Should be the last slide.
That's all I got. That's all I got. Did you update this recently?
I put another slide on it last night, but if it's not there, it's not there.
Let me reload it real quick. Okay, present.
Oh, maybe I didn't add it.
Nope, it's not there.
Oh, it's on the Google Doc. I'm sorry.
Oh, there it is.
No, the evidence is I'm sorry, I didn't add it to the slideshow. I added it to the Google Doc. It's literally a picture of people making milkshakes with big buckets. No, it's not there. I
Yeah.
I didn't add it to the slideshow. I will endeavor to present better presentation next time. But the image is of people making milkshakes using big containers because they're making a lot of milkshakes to hand out to the protesters. And people are assuming that those big containers must be for mixing cement.
Stop sharing because it's not there.
That's fine. That's fine. That was my mistake. I'm always so perfectionist and maybe even a little unforgiving of other people when they screw things up. And now I screwed something up in my own presentation. Thanks everybody. I'm not used to really presenting or giving talks. And I had to kind of tweak that a little bit. I was going to give a talk like this at Orchard City Indivisible. In fact, I was going to give it basically the week that the shutdown of everything happened. So I went through and retooled it last night for this. And like I said, I brought my biases to this. I don't like Sam Harris. I certainly don't like Andy No. And I don't like the cults of personality around a lot of famous atheists on the internet. And, if anybody's interested in this misinformation that happened around the cement milkshakes, there's a whole story behind it. And it's real interesting. And I think you can probably just look up Portland cement milkshakes and you can go down a really deep rabbit hole. But like, this is the reason I did this is one of us was spreading misinformation. And I think it's really important that we can understand that it doesn't matter if you're a skeptic, an atheist, a humanist, it doesn't matter who it is. We can all be victims of our own bias. And I think that as embarrassing it as it is to Mr. Harris here, I think he was a victim of his own bias, because on other matters, I feel like maybe he might be less inclined to just share something about a cement milkshake.
But you're taking him out of context.
Well, yes, of course, there's that too. So it's just really important that we understand that our friends can be the ones spreading misinformation. Maybe some of our heroes, mind you, he's not one of my heroes, but to a lot of non-believers, Sam Harris is a bit of a hero. And so I just wanted to, maybe bring that up here so that we can all kind of understand that it's us, it's everyone, and that it can be anyone.
So do you want to open the floor to questions?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was hoping, I was looking for some hands up, but.
I don't see any hands.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, we got one. Carl. I'm going to unmute Carl. Yeah, there we go.
Am I there? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We didn't welcome Sue Shallot. She just joined, and also she doesn't know. Yeah, she doesn't know that you have to click on the thing at the bottom of the screen that says participants. In the lower right-hand corner, when that window opens, you can raise your hand. So if you want to say something, that's how he'll unmute you. You announced that earlier, but I'm pretty sure she didn't hear it. But I'm one who definitely agrees with you that sometimes when I get into discussions in humanist discussion groups of various kinds, I find that I'm certainly biased, and I have confirmation bias up the kazoo. As we read books about it, we know that every human being has it. And I am attracted to unusual things, and then right away I start being skeptic and start trying to check into it. This latest shelter-in-place thing is a thing that's in some ways there's a lot of misinformation flying around about it, but sometimes, like you call this, probably be more like propaganda. That's what you called it, because what they're trying to do is get people to conform to something, like they did during the war, buy savings bonds or whatever. And so sometimes it can have a good end. And then the question is, when you're fooling around with propaganda, do you fool around with the truth, or do you obscure the facts? Anyway, I'll shut up and you can maybe comment on that.
Oh no, I don't need anybody to shut up. It fills some more time. I like the engagement here. Yeah, I think that like I said, I think propaganda is just media used to influence, and it could be good, could be bad. It's got a bad connotation because, well, most of the time it's used to embolden the powerful. I think would be a fair way to put it. Propaganda isn't often used to embolden the powerless. I see Ray has his hand up.
Yeah. Before I unmute Ray, I just want to point out, because Carl brought up misinformation about the whole virus thing. I just want to point out that vitamin C is probably not going to make a big difference unless you have scurvy. That was
or a deficiency and you're already taking supplements.
Yeah.
On doctor's orders.
Right. But a normal amount, not these crazy, like 1 million times your daily allowance crap. Yeah, I'm gonna unmute Ray. Ray, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things I do when I'm on Facebook is I try and be careful about what I click like on or what I comment on. And you see a lot of things on there that if they were true, they sound really good. But if you click like on that without trying to validate whether or not it's true, you're part of the problem. So one of the sources I use is Wikipedia. I think that that's pretty well monitored, and I haven't seen any indication that there's a lot of misinformation or false stuff on there. And then the other thing is just look around and search a variety of sources to see if, you can get a sense of whether something is actual or misinformation.
Yeah, I think like in the example that I showed, these things were all happening in real time. And so there was some desire by especially media figures to maybe get it first, right? There's always a desire to be first. And I think that a lot of times, everybody from the New York Times to Deepak Chopra maybe would be inclined to try to get it first. And sometimes the truth and accuracy are sacrificed in the desire to get something first.
Okay, I don't see. Ray, you're going back on mute because you're not saying anything. I don't see anybody else with their hands up. Anybody else have a question or comment?
Look at that. We're right up against that 12:15 time that you thought we would open the floor. Oh, looks like Sue wants to say something.
Okay, Sue. She got her hand up. All right, Sue, go for it.
Hey, Sue.
Oh, hold on. Oh, yeah, we're here.
Yep.
We were a little late because we joined 2 other Zoom meetings this morning. 2 Unitarian ones, one in our Sonora group that was quite well attended, had about over 30 people. And the impressive one was the San Jose one, San Jose Unitarian, which had 125 people on it. Very well put together. I was very impressed how Nancy, the minister, handled the session and the activities. It's all, it's just something that we were deciding to do this morning, and we've been doing it for the last couple Sundays, just as a bit of information of where are we, and that's where we are. On Zoom everywhere. So, okay, thanks.
I want to say something when it's appropriate.
And now.
I've been listening to the DNA aspect of COVID, and it's the reason why people are dying at randomness is that there is a coding on every cell in humans that has a checkpoint for rejecting or accepting foreign objects. And randomly, some people are well-to-do and other people have these checkpoints on the cells of their bodies that is sucking in virus. So there's and there's another situation that even if you didn't inherit the bad sucking coating on your cells, your environment through the years have changed that to be randomly bad for sucking up things. And one more thing I want to mention, that for me, pandemic isn't the watchword. Pan means everything. Ultra-demic is beyond pandemic, and I'd like to pass on that we could call it ultra-demic, but it may be already thought about, but it may be confusing. So stay tuned.
Cool. Well, thanks for the information. I don't know a lot about infectious diseases. My expertise is in spotting bullshit. So, yeah, I'd be interested if you have some links about that or whatever. Maybe I could share it with the people that follow me on Facebook and whatnot, and get some real information out there from real scientists. Because people are kind of the thing that's going on with this COVID-19 is that people really do want information, and that's one of the reasons it's such a powerful vector for misinformation and disinformation, I think.
Yeah, I muted them because it looks like they're done. But
how do I rename myself in the chat here? Anybody know?
You're supposed to be able to. I did allow people to, allowed everybody to rename themselves, which I thought made a lot of sense. I want to be real careful with people mentioning things from sources online, even if they're like scientists and such online. We're still pretty early in the pandemic, and I think we're gonna, we don't know a whole lot of stuff. We do know some things. But we're probably not going to know everything until it's all been long done and there's a lot of studies can be performed. So, yeah, just be careful out there.
And I dropped a link in the chat. The one that I'm keeping an eye on right now are the anti-5G people, mainly because I was pretty concerned that they were going to start that they were going to turn domestic terrorist, because there was a lot of chatter in those groups about how they should take action against the towers, like calls to action for violence or property damage or whatever, or like a big red flag for me in any kind of movement. And I dropped a link in the chat. It's an article from The Verge from 4/4. That's just yesterday. People in the UK have decided to light communications towers on fire because they believe 5G is aiding or causing the spread of the COVID-19 virus. And if people sometimes ask me why I go after conspiracy theorists the way I do, but a lot of the times this is where it ends up. This is where misinformation ends up. People take dangerous action based on false information, based on things they're afraid of. And that's the end game here. Like, this is why I don't go after people who believe in aliens or Bigfoot. They're not going to do anything. You don't see a lot of terrorist chatter in those communities, but in the anti-5G communities, you see people saying they need to take down the communications towers because they're giving everyone cancer, or now they say it's giving everyone COVID-19 or allowing the disease to spread. In the chemtrail community, you see people discussing the possibility of shooting down passenger aircraft. And I hope where somebody went into a pizza place where they thought there was a child abuse ring and started shooting. Thankfully, nobody got hurt. Right? Like, thankfully, the man was arrested. No one was injured. There were very few people at the location there. But that's the end game for a lot of misinformation, is that there are calls to action and people take heed to these calls to action. And that's why misinformation is so dangerous. And that's why I've spent, the last 5 years kind of combating it. And, if I can get a purveyor of misinformation to come on my show and I can humiliate them, that's why I do it. It's also good for my ego, but it's because there might be people on the fence. I might be able to peel off some of the people that are following them by making them look ridiculous. And that might be one less person who goes and lights a communication tower on fire. And so, this stuff really matters, and it's very difficult. I forget who it was asked what we can do to stop it, and I'm not sure what we can do to stop it. I think we're all differently situated and we all have different skills. And, some of us are very kind and understanding and are able to break things down for people in a way that they can understand and maybe plant a seed in their mind. Some of people like me are a little more aggressive and are going to go after the tops of these organizations, the tops of these I call them little online cults, and try to cut the head off of the cult by embarrassing them. Some of us are great science communicators. Some of us go out and in our communities and help other people, and maybe that builds community and reduces fear. So there's not just one thing that we can do, but I think that Facebook and YouTube are asleep at the wheel on this matter in a lot of ways. I think especially Facebook is asleep at the wheel. If they know that I am a gay person who likes disco music, rides my bike everywhere, and takes transit to work every day, they know who's spreading misinformation. They know who runs the anti-vaccine groups with hundreds of thousands of members. And if they can market to me, they can certainly do something about the main purveyors of misinformation on their platform. And I think they choose not to. Yeah, Scott.
Just a second. Let me find him and unmute him. Okay, Scott, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I have objections to Facebook, but I find myself kind of trapped because I know there's other social media, but it's just not the same. You know, Facebook, that's where my friends are. I kind of find myself a little trapped. If anyone can suggest anything I can do to help fix that, I'd appreciate it.
You can't. They're functionally a monopoly. They don't really have any competition in their space. Like if you go onto Twitter, right? See what happens when you join Facebook, you kind of get a love bomb, right? Say I didn't have Facebook until today, and then I joined, and all the people that I know in real life add me, and then all of a sudden I have all these friends, and it's kind of like a love bomb like they talk about in cults, right? Because you're like, oh crap, now I have 500 friends and 500 people following me, and when I'm posting, people are liking and commenting. And you go on Twitter and you follow all your friends, half of them aren't checking Twitter. They don't have to do anything. They don't, you know, like if I were to friend you, Scott, on Facebook, you would have to accept it, right? But if I followed you on Twitter, you might not even notice it. Now I'm following you, I'm not getting followed back. So you're not getting the same thing from a service like Twitter that you are from Facebook. And Facebook is where you keep in touch with the people you already know. At least that's was the original business model. And so I think that you're right. I think that you are trapped because trying to get your, you know, for me, just for what we're doing here at Echoplex Media, me trying to get everybody to stop using Facebook group chats for everything was one of the most difficult things I did with my organization. I eventually got everybody onto Discord, which is great. I love Discord, but you're not going to find all your friends there. I just found it was easier for me to keep track of what was going on, and I didn't have 9 Facebook group chats. And you know, I think that to an extent, you're describing the problem that I'm describing, but from a different angle, right? If everybody has to be there, then everybody's there. And misinformation is going to spread more quickly among more people because they have the most daily active users. And I think it's the same exact problem. There is no competition for Facebook. Could you imagine if you were trying to pitch to a venture capitalist a service to go directly against Facebook? You would get laughed out of the room.
Hey, we can always use G+.
Google Plus was beautiful. I used it as a newsreader, by the way. It was the most beautiful newsreader I've ever used on my phone. It looked wonderful on a big Android phone.
That's good.
But nobody was there.
Nobody was using it.
But imagine Google is like one of the world's largest companies. If they couldn't build a competing project to Facebook 5 or 6 years ago, nobody's going to be able to do it today. So at some point, the onus has to be on the board of directors at a company like Facebook or a company like YouTube that are basically de facto monopolies in their space. But the problem is that kind of butts right up against their obligation to their shareholders to maximize profit. And so what they're going to do, I think, is what they've continued to do, which is to say they're going to do something about X problem, make one sort of symbolic step about it, and then continue to take ads from the same group of people that caused the problem in the first place, just asking them to kind of change their wording and use different dog whistles about the misinformation they're spreading. And I don't think that, you know, basically with companies, with their first obligation being to maximize shareholder value, I don't think there's any way to stop that. Because Facebook is going to get sued by a bunch of activist investors if they go and start kicking off the purveyors of misinformation from their platform. And that's just what's going to happen. And so...
Yeah, that's probably true.
So, also, Peter Thiel's up in that mix, and I don't trust him.
Before I put Susan back on, for, like, you mentioned a while ago, YouTube and Google, and YouTube has a big problem with bunch of misinformation on there, and you mentioned like people getting their accounts stolen and you're not able to get it back. And Google is really good about allowing you to be able to basically lock down your account so nobody can steal it. That's using stuff like you can use security keys, you can use authenticator programs and stuff like that. That's going to make it much harder for people to get into your accounts. I strongly recommend, if you have a Google account, look up what these things are I'm talking about and implement one or more of them.
Make no mistake, the Google account that controls everything for what we're doing here is locked down. There is no shortage of people who would love to get a hold of my Google account.
Yeah.
Because of what we're doing here. I mean, Matt comes on my shows. You could name 6 people off the top of your head that would like nothing better than to have the login to my website or to my YouTube or to my Twitch or to our Facebook page, right? And we're not even a big organization. But I think what Matt is saying is very important. You should look, everybody, just on a kind of personal security in the digital age, you should look into things like 2-factor authentication, or some places even offer 3-factor. And it's only going to be inconvenient until it would only be inconvenient until you experience the inconvenience of losing an account. And then you would realize what real inconvenience is.
Here, I'm going to let Susan, unmute Susan.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I want to agree with Scott on the nature of Facebook. I went on there originally several years ago because my whole family is on it around the world. And I can't, there's no communication with our family except through that Facebook. And it's an amazing resource for that process. I do agree with David that it's totally out of hand. It's crazy. The biggest thing I have is Messenger on Facebook. I really do not like it. And I have gotten scammed royally on that. And people insist on sending me Messenger messages. I try to ignore them. I shut them out. I do all the things that, I can do. But, if I'm going to do instant messaging, stuff like that, I would prefer they have my phone number and can text me. They know me. And Messenger is a mess as far as I'm concerned.
Also, that's just more personal. If someone, like if I get a message on Facebook Messenger, I might not check it right away. But if somebody texts me, that indicates to me that they're trying to get a hold of me.
Yes.
And if they
That's
call,
true. Texting is really good at this point. I like it. I don't like Messenger. And, I don't know. I was wondering one thing. This is off subject a little bit. Get closer. This is off subject a little bit. That you have 2 links to this program right now. One is this interactive one, and then the other one is just listening. What's the other link? It's very confusing to me.
Oh, the other link is for example, if somebody there's some people watching on my Twitch channel. I'm just putting this up on Twitch. The other link is for let's say maybe you didn't feel like interacting by putting yourself on camera. You didn't want to speak to us today for whatever reason. Maybe you're not feeling well. Maybe you're doing chores. There are any number of things you might be doing. So you could just watch, and
Well, the problem is I went to that first and I got a little sidetracked and lost onto some, I had to be a mature audience to get on and I thought, what the heck is this link? And so I really had a hard time getting to this. And then I saw the link below and I came here and I felt better. And I have a feeling there are some humanists that might be interested in getting more to this link that are scared off by the first link. Because it doesn't go automatically as far as I can see. Just a suggestion.
Oh yeah, the post in maybe for next week's forum, the post can be like a little more explicit about which is which. That one of them is a watch only link.
Offer this one first, and then the other one as a backup. If you want to just be on the sideline and be a viewer.
So we'll take a look at the post on Meetup. So for everybody who's listening and doesn't know about our meetup. It's the Humanist Community of Silicon Valley on meetup.com. We've been posting these forums. We've been doing the forums forever, but for the online ones, we have both the link to the Twitch stream, the live stream, and to this Zoom forum or meeting that we're running right now. We do describe what each link is for in pretty good detail. We can look at just switching. I think it does link to the Twitch page.
I'll put the Zoom first for sure.
Yeah.
For interaction.
Well,
yeah.
no,
So
what I'm saying is that I got on the Twitch. I didn't know, was I supposed to click on Twitch when I got there? And then I got there, and then I really didn't get to this group meeting right away. I was getting into a whole bunch of other selections, so it was a little bit unfocused for me. And I don't know how other people are doing it. I'm not as, I maybe have a little more technical background than some people in the humanist community, so that if I had issues, I can't imagine what other people are going through.
Well, maybe you can help Matt out a little bit with next week's post. Make it more explicit that one is like just watch only and one is to participate. I think that would be a very good thing.
Yeah, Matt, if you want to do this offline and do a test run or something, what I experienced, I could talk to you offline.
Okay, we can talk offline or online, but off this meeting. Right. Because we can't meet in person.
Okay.
Off air.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Looks like we have a couple. Yeah, we have a couple other people with their hands up, so I'm gonna go ahead and mute you, Susan, and move on. And look, I think Carl had his hand up first, so I can't unmute you, Carl. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, Susan, I just went in and clicked on it. It said did give the mature audience. I don't know why it did, but it did. But it went straight in. So maybe sometimes you have to be very careful. Are you using Firefox? Are you using Firefox as your browser?
I muted her, so.
Oh, you're not.
Talk.
No. Anyway, Firefox has been going through a lot of updates recently, and it fusses around a lot with what you can do and can't do. So you might want to check that out. Try it again because it went straight in for me.
Oh, it's because you had visited prior. The reason I have the mature audiences on there is I don't want kids watching my shows on Twitch. My shows aren't for kids. Like
and
it's
we
just
do have strong language periodically.
It's just the ethical thing to do to let people so that people understand that like I don't think what we're talking about now is for kids, to be perfectly honest. There's nothing offensive here, but this is a forum for adults that I'm presenting. So, but yeah. I hope everybody. This has been a little bit tough. Believe me, we've come a long way since the first week we tried to do this virtually. It was very difficult because we weren't using Zoom, and we've come a little bit of a long way. But yeah, I think it might be the post should be as explicit as possible as to which is which. I just think that some people are unfamiliar with Zoom, don't have a webcam, don't have a microphone. And I just put up the Twitch feed so that folks who are situated like that would have somewhere to watch and at least be able to see the meeting and stay in touch with the humanist community in that way.
Okay, looks like we have Ray has his hand up. Ray, you're unmuted.
All right. So I would like to get back to the subject of these people like Facebook and Google who have responsibilities to shareholders, but also have responsibilities to humanity as a whole. And I think that there needs to be more discussion about legislation or other means to make a balance between shareholder needs and the needs of humanity as a whole. So I'd like to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on that.
That's like the problem with that is like that what you're talking about is basically a massive structural change in the way that governments and corporations interact and the way that society and corporations interact. And like that's sort of out of my wheelhouse. That's like a policy wonk or somebody, you know, that's a legislation thing. And I don't think that public pressure is going to make the executives at any of these companies change their tune. I think that the public is able to exert very little pressure on an organization like Facebook or Google. And I think that the people who are able to exert pressure on them are their shareholders and maybe governments where they operate their services. And the governments are supposed to represent the people. But, you know, I don't know. We all probably, if everyone in this Zoom meeting probably has a different idea of where the line should be, what these companies should allow, what they shouldn't allow, what they should pull down, what kind of accounts they should terminate from their service and stuff. So I think it's, you know, it's a bit of a tough egg to crack. And I'm not confident that the people running these companies really spend a lot of time thinking about the ethics of what they're doing. I think that particularly Facebook, their motto at the beginning was move fast and break things. And so they just it didn't occur to them that what they were going to break was to some degree our society. And, you know, I don't think that without Facebook and YouTube, these people would have been burning down these 5G communication towers, you know? I think that they got this information somewhere, and it was probably online, and it probably wasn't on some fringe site like WorldNet Daily or Gab. I bet they got this information from a Facebook group. And so, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not hopeful that all of a sudden they're going to have a come to Jesus moment over at Facebook or whatever and start acting ethically. I don't think that I wish I believed that was in the realm of possibility. But I've been watching this stuff for a while, and it's a cycle. It's a cycle where they do some PR to try to get good press about stopping misinformation. Then a month later, the very same misinformation is right in front of me as a paid ad. And so I wish I had I wish I was more optimistic about this stuff.
So I think that you're right. It is a policy issue, and we need to somehow get a bigger discussion going on how these policies can be implemented to get a balance between shareholder needs and the needs of society. And this goes farther than misinformation and propaganda and things like that. I think it gets to the whole idea of unregulated capitalism versus how much regulation do you have to get a balance.
Yeah, like I said, I wish I was more hopeful. Today I bring you cynicism, unfortunately, not hope.
Well, I think I'm actually more hopeful because I think the younger generation right now is doing a lot of positive things related to climate change and related to public policy and other things that I'm hopeful.
Well, unfortunately, they don't vote.
That's another problem, but we need to encourage that any way we can, and they need to start encouraging that among themselves. The people that do vote, that are involved, need to encourage their peers in that age range to change their tune. And I guess this might be a slight change in subjects, but getting back to coronavirus, you've got right now the older people, I think, are more responsible in terms of following social distancing and believing that this is a real serious problem. And whenever you go out, grocery store for a hike or whatever, you see that it's mostly the younger people that are not following social distancing.
Yeah, and also it's going to vary. What I'm noticing is it's varying state by state. Like California seems to be doing a better job than other states, at least from what I'm reading. It's a little hard to tell because every place is going to have pockets where people aren't doing the right thing. Like Florida had spring break. like, and that was young people, but then again, that was the policymakers not telling all these businesses to shut down too. So it's like, you know, you get a perfect storm of, you know, the young people want to do spring break and don't, you know, maybe because of youth, they don't care. I mean, everybody at 20 thinks they're invincible, right? And so, and then you have that mixed with the policymakers who, in some cases were doing the right thing, like California did a good job. I believe New York was a little late to the party, but now they're doing a good job. And then you have like Florida, where they didn't want to lock everything down because they, I don't know, they thought that business would suffer or whatever. And it's like, well, you know, it's a little column A, little column B, unfortunately.
So you say that California is doing a good job, but my research and experience kind of says the opposite. I think that, you know, based on what I see when I go out on a hiking trail or to the grocery store, is that we're beyond the point where we can hope that social responsibility is going to solve the problem. I think we're at the point where we need enforcement at places like Walmart. There needs to be a law enforcement presence there to enforce social distancing. If you look at the numbers on daily new cases and daily death totals, or California, we're still growing at a crazy rate. We haven't flattened the curve yet.
I mean, I guess I meant from our policymakers as far as California. Maybe I wasn't clear there. I think our policymakers generally are putting out the right messaging. I agree with you that a lot of people aren't taking this seriously, and I think that misinformation does play a role in people not taking these kinds of things seriously. We've all seen those memes going around about how many people the flu kills, right? You have to have seen them, and that's misinformation, because that's a known entity that runs its course every year, whereas this COVID-19, we have no idea what that graph's going to look like when all is said and done. And so, like, you know, comparing incomplete information from COVID-19 to information that we have from completed flu season is definitely misleading. And I think that that's just one example of why some folks might not be taking this very seriously. But it's not the only reason. Like you were saying, there's no enforcement. Younger people often think they're invincible, and so they're not as worried maybe as, you know, even people in their 40s and above. And so I think it's, you know, it's never just one thing.
So I think it's hopeful that we are starting to see some information out there that this may result in hundreds of thousands of people dead, if not millions. And, you know, of course, still a big part of the problem is our executive branch.
You ain't wrong.
I want to be careful about this, because, like, I think there's been a lot of media reports that, oh, young people are ignoring recommendations and going out and doing things, but and to a certain extent, I'm sure there are, and certainly in certain places. But once we have that in our head, it's very easy to go around and try to confirm that, you know, or to actually confirm that with your observations rather than actual doing real studies. Like, just walking out and going to the grocery store is not a study on whether or not people are maintaining their social distance. If you look at I have been watching the numbers, both in California and you know, countrywide, comparing the different states, as well as our particular county of Santa Clara County. Some of you may not be here, and it definitely looks like California is doing better. They've definitely reduced the growth rate and number of infections, and Santa Clara County has really dropped. We were one of the first counties to have an infection rate, you know, get infected with the coronavirus, and after initially running up very quickly, it has reduced down quite significantly. Yes, it's still going up. Yes, it's still going up at a fairly fast rate, but it's clearly much better than it was. And certain other states, it's hard to compare by county across states, but certain other states who haven't been as careful and haven't done as much stuff to reduce the spread are in much worse position than we are right now.
So I agree. I have seen some information that indicates we are approaching an apex. But I think that, you know, we still need to do as much as we can to slow this down.
You know, there's other states where the governor have basically gone out there and told you to pray COVID-19 away. I mean, so like, I mean, that's not going to be, we're not going to elect someone like that in California. The odds of someone like that becoming the governor of California are very slim because of the nature of this state. There's like a lot of, especially in the cities, there's a lot of secular folks like ourselves who would never vote for someone like that for the governor. So you know, it's kind of shocking to see differences between places with competent leadership and you know, incompetent leadership, even if you just look at the messaging. Because at least here in California, we have, you know, elected officials who are endeavoring to give us good information, endeavoring to, you know, give us science-based information when they come out and talk. And in other places in this country, unfortunately, some of the leadership is inclined to do otherwise.
Okay, Ray, I'm going to put you back on mute because I have Susan, who has her hand up. I'm sure I still have it. Okay. All right, Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'm listening to this conversation the other day, and unfortunately it was on one of those Trump things, oh God. But somebody said something that Oracle had donated and I can't remember what the term was, but it's a very large place to do data, put collected data on, and I don't know what the nature of the stuff, you know, so that everybody could get in and put stuff on to do analytics and so forth. Does anybody know anything what they're doing? And also, you know, the reason I'm asking is that, you know, one of the things I get really concerned about is that people, you know, yesterday was the first day I went out in a week and a half to pick up my groceries, and oh God, it was a nightmare. You know, I mean, it was Walmart, but it was an online pickup at the parking lot area, which was a little bit weird. But anyway, what happened was that I kept thinking, even with the few people that I got in contact with, how do we know who they've been in contact with? How is this being, how are people being, I hate to say tracked, because I'm really nervous about the tracking and the security of people themselves, their own selves. But I don't know if that's what the Oracle database is trying to accomplish, or try to get more tracking information on how this disease is being communicated, what, when, where, why, you know, like who did you talk to, you know, stuff, but maybe it could be anonymous. Anybody know anything about this Oracle offer?
My Twitch chat is on the case. It's a web portal for people to add research to. So I think it's more for scientists and folks who have already gathered data than it is for like individuals to kind of track their movements. If that makes sense. Like, I think it's more for more place.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I'm just wondering if there is going to be anything like that, because one of the things that I worry, you know, I went out to the store to pick up my stuff, and then I went one more stop at this deli that I did a phone order for. And at those two places, I interacted with maybe 10 people because they were around. You know, and those 10 people have interacted with who and whatever. And I don't want everybody to be tracked. I think there is a real privacy issue here. But it does give some kind of information if you can figure out what, where, who, how is this happening? Because it's very, very scary out there. It's frightening. I mean, I'm there with the mask and the gloves and, you know, sanitizer and all this crap. And I was like, oh, shit, I don't know. I came home thinking I had a fever.
Well, you described the rub right there, right? Because we want to do everything we can to kind of help keep people safe and identify people who have been infected and get them treatment if treatment is necessary. But the rub there is, like you said, the data collection and the what happens to that data after, who has access to it, how will it be used? I mean, in a pessimistic way, I guess, how will it be used against us in the future by the powerful or by corporations or by people who seek to just generate ad revenue off of us, or there's any number of things that this information could be used for later that has nothing to do with the current situation. And I think that's the rub. And I think that our policymakers are kind of stuck in that same position that you're describing, with the wanting to get everybody help, but the concern for overreach and the concern for misconduct by any number of organizations that might have access to this information if we do generate it and make it public or semi-public in some way. So I think you've described very accurately the rub. And I think that, in a free or mostly free society, we struggle with these kinds of things all the time.
Yeah. And it's like we need the data, but it needs to have an anonymous nature. And I don't know if it's possible.
Well, from what I've read, they're not actually tracking people directly. We're not even tracking people, tracking interactions of people that we have known cases. However, I think that is the goal. If we can get the number of cases down to a reasonable number, then we can start actually just physically asking people, people who've had the COVID-19, who did you interact with in the past week? And then they trace down who was exposed and get them tested. But we're not at a position to do that right now. I don't believe anybody's tracking where you are via your phone or anything like that, besides Google, who's been doing it anyway.
And Facebook
if you don't
and
know
Twitter.
about that, look that up.
And every app on your phone.
Yeah.
But they were doing that before this.
So Ray has his hand up, but what I'm thinking I want to do is just go ahead and
open everything
allow
up.
Everybody to unmute themselves. Yeah. And I'm going to lower your hand, Ray, but you can jump in now. Everybody can unmute themselves if you have comments. We can do a free-for-all. Just be careful about stepping on other people when they're talking.
Okay, I just wanted to reply to Susan. I think that the problem with knowing, if the person that you're approaching, whether they have it or not, you could have a much better result if we had more people tested, because I don't know that I'm carrying it. I might be. And if I knew that, then I could react differently interacting with other people. And Fremont, which is basically the area I live in, opened up testing, and foolishly thinking it was for everybody, I went to the drive-through to get tested, and they took my temperature and they asked me a bunch of questions, and then they said I wasn't eligible for testing right now. So the minuscule percentage of people in this country that have been tested, I think, is a big part of the problem. We need to get testing available for everybody, not just those showing symptoms. And that way, people that know they are carrying the virus and potentially contagious can take extra measures to avoid contaminating other people.
Yeah, for example,
you're absolutely right.
Go ahead.
The testing part is it's so small. It's so scary and even if you got tested today, what happens in a day from now, or who you've gone? I mean, it's like, what good is today's test if tomorrow's test would have turned out different?
That's a good point.
We have it every day.
And Alex, I see you have your hand up, but everybody is unmuted right now, so you can just talk.
Oh, we can't hear them.
I think they're in there twice. I don't know why.
Oh.
I told them to get rid of the Senna and Alex one. But
that's okay. Yeah, we can't hear them. But like, for example, if I knew I was a carrier, I would probably behave a little bit differently. I'm pretty much isolating. Like, the only thing I do is go out and get groceries, and I'll go for a bike ride in the morning because ain't nobody on the trail. It's solitary activity, helps keep me sane. Not going to like any group bike rides, like not, you know, yeah. So, but if I knew I was a carrier, I would probably cut even those two things out and see if a neighbor could drop groceries on my front porch or something, you know, and I could just send the money over Venmo or PayPal to take care of it. I think what you were saying about, you know, if people could find out if they were asymptomatic carriers, most people would tend to act responsibly, at least I hope. And I think that that would be really helpful. You know, and the numbers that we have for the number of infections, that's the number of people who got a test and were confirmed to have it. The number for people who are infected is probably dramatically higher than what we're seeing as far as people who've been tested and people who have, you know, been proven and shown to have it. So I think the numbers are like, they're, you know, highly dependent on who's able to get tested.
What are we going to do about Alex and Senna? She doesn't understand, and she's talking, and nobody's hearing.
I have no idea. It was working before. And
have them raise their hand if they hear us. Raise your hand in the picture if you hear us. Alex, raise your hand. Okay.
Yeah.
So you hear us, but we don't hear you. So your microphone is not on somehow. I had problems with microphones a few times.
Yeah, I don't think your microphone is muted in Zoom. I think it's some other problem.
Right, muted at the system level.
It's on your computer.
Turned on.
There
we go.
There you go.
Oh, you got me?
Yep.
Now I can hear you.
Good.
I need to say, in Fremont and Hayward.
Get closer to the microphone.
In Fremont and Hayward, they had to drive in testing things, but you have to have a
Turn up microphone volume.
I don't have that volume. How about this?
Okay.
Oh, maybe, no. Maybe here. Okay. How about now? Does that help?
I hear you a little better.
A little better.
That's better.
Okay. But it isn't that important to me to get out of it, but I appreciate that this is trying to let me. I just wanted to say that in order to qualify for testing, even at these places that are set up to do it, you have to have a temperature of over 100.4 before they'll test you. So that was good to start. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, testing's a real nightmare. The other thing is there's this thing going around about the ventilators, and one of the things I noticed about the ventilators was that Elon Musk, once again, to get good press, said he was going to donate a bunch of ventilators. Then he sent the ventilators, and they don't work. And
so what happened with them is he got these what he was calling ventilators, but they aren't ventilators.
CPAP machines.
I think they're CPAP machines. I think they're called for people who have sleep apnea. So they just give like a little bit of positive air pressure to keep you breathing at night. They're not actual ventilators that basically take over the breathing for you.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Are those the ones that came in and to Southern California and then came up to our area to get fixed? Because there was a whole bunch of that sort.
I don't think so. I think the ones that needed to be fixed came from the federal government, from Trump, basically.
Yes.
He sent us a bunch of broken ones, but which sucks, but we're fixing them.
Yeah, the Bay Area helped on that.
Yeah, people are 3D printing parts to fix those ventilators. Like the maker community is kind of stepping up in this case, and it's pretty nice to see. I think that you know, one person with a 3D printer can't make a lot of these parts, but 1,000 people with 3D printers can probably make a lot of these replacement parts. And one of the things I saw that was pretty nasty is one of the medical supply companies tried to go after one of the people 3D printing the part for like patent or trademark or copyright infringement. I forget which one it was, and it was like, oh, you're terrible.
Yeah, I think they were like 3D printing like connectors for the hoses or something that I don't know why they, I think it was like in Italy, they didn't have enough of them or something. And the company that owned the patent tried to go after them. I don't know what happened, but I feel like if you do something like that, your patent should be invalidated on the spot.
Or like an ethical organization would be like, hey, if you're going to 3D print these parts, here's our schematic for it, and we are going to, we're going to not enforce our copyright for the next 90 days, or not enforce our patent for the next 90 days. And if this continues to go on and these parts continue to break, we will extend that. That's what an ethical organization would do. But medical supply companies tend to maybe not be ethical organizations, because they tried to get people to stop 3D printing parts to fix machines that, come on, man.
Well, there's a group called Santa Cruz Works, and I've attended a couple of their online things lately, and they have a group that is sharing design files for 3D printed mask parts and things like that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good use of a 3D printer, and I think if anybody out there has a 3D printer and isn't doing this, I think they should consider doing this if their printer is capable of making any of these parts. Take the hit on paying for the mailing it to whoever needs the parts. Like I think that it's a good thing that somebody can do, especially if they're stuck at home and you're like you'd be helping your fellow man, and it doesn't really take much. All you do is grab the file, put it in, and walk away.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the people on Santa Cruz Works, those businesses are doing that. They're making the parts, they're shipping them at their own expense, and so on.
There is another maker group I went to in Sonora, where my other house is near Jamestown, and they have a 3D printer. I could probably contact them to see if they're involved. I am sure they know the other maker groups, but they do have an effective 3D printer.
They might get in touch with Santa Cruz Works.
Okay.
If they need information on how to get involved in this.
Okay, I will tell the Sonora group and see if we can coordinate that. I'm in San Jose right now, but I can contact them.
Yeah, I think most of the maker groups are probably going to be on this, but definitely contact them. And I think that individuals may just not know that they can do this. And so maybe the maker groups, even if they're already doing it to some extent, could help with education and help people who have the 3D printers to make the devices and whatnot, because that's what the maker groups exist for anyway,
Well, they need to know what parts are needed, exactly the right designs, and so forth. It's critical.
Right, of course.
Yeah, again, if you look at the Santa Cruz Works website, you can find that specific section, I think.
Oh, very good, very good. I'll talk to them.